welcome each and every whoever is there. Last time we had done camping skills 2 for rangers, right? The
Yes.
camping skills 2 was done for rangers, and this one is for explorers and above. So I hope that those who have joined the class today have completed camping skills 2 already, because you cannot simply jump to camping skills 3 without knowing uh, what the syllabus for camping skills 2 was. I just like to ask uh, the co-host to put up the PowerPoint. We just get into it. All right. Camping skills 3 honor. So you'll see the thing about this patch is there's a circle there. All right. Around the patch, and it's in green color. It's lime. It's somewhat of a lime green color. Could you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so in camping skills 2, we learned about the W's. All right, the 6 W's of camping. The first thing is to be aware of the wind. All right, because when you're looking for a good camp, it should not be too windy, because when you pitch a tent, the bigger your tent is, or the wind can carry it away. All right, the smaller you are, the smaller you are, then the more streamlined you are, the less the wind can carry you. Wherever you are, it becomes like a parachute. So even if you have a tent somewhere in a very windy place, no matter whether you're sleeping inside or not, you may be 40 kilos, there may be 80, two of you 80 kilos, but if the wind is strong enough, it will act like a parachute. All right, it'll act like a parachute, and then it can carry the whole tent away. And when it's very windy, there are things that can come flying. All right, when it's very windy, even a small piece of iron or a small piece of stone can go through a steel plate, and if it's fast enough like a hurricane speed, it can go through concrete, it can go through buildings. So wind is something that you have to be very careful about when you're looking for a good campsite. The next thing is water. All right, because water is one of the most essential things for life. Without water you cannot survive. It's very hard to survive for a week, because if you lose more than 10% of your water, you are unable to think straight. Your brain is about 90% water. All right, when you lose about 2% of your water in the brain, then you are not able to think straight. You'll be able to see, I mean, you will see hallucinations, you'll be hallucinating, you'll be seeing things, you'll be hearing things. And without water in a dry place, especially when you've gone camping, when you go camping, you usually like to go hiking and all that. If you do not have water, you will suffer from muscle cramps, which will make you unable to travel anywhere. So it's very important to have good, clean water nearby. Now, the importance of water is, just because the water looks clear does not mean it is drinkable. All right, because there are small bacteria that may live in the water, plasmodium, and all those kind of things, and they can affect your liver. And there is many times there's no cure for it. So be very careful. Always boil your water well, and yeah, try to make sure that you have water around which is clean. Next is the weather. All right, before you go camping, the good thing is, now you can always Google what is the weather for this week. Like over here, the place where I am, it's raining, it's the rainy season. So because it's raining, like the picture shows, I can carry an umbrella, or I should have a raincoat, or some a good rain protection. All right, I should not carry those warm woolen clothes, because warm woolen clothes, when they get wet, they can become heavy. They can trap the cold and remove the heat from your body, and you might die or be badly affected due to hypothermia. Or whether, suppose you're going to a hot place like Dubai, in Kuwait and all, you're not going to be carrying all your winter clothes, right? Because you're going in the desert, you're going to wear something uh, that is light and cool, like cotton clothes. That's why most of the people in the desert, they prefer linen clothes or cotton clothes, because uh, cotton or linen, they allow the sweat to evaporate easily and they keep you cool. Next thing is wild things. Before going to any place, make sure that you are aware of what wild things are there. Like in Asia, you're not going to find the puma, you're not going to find the cayman, you're not going to find you're not going to find alligators. All right, because in Asia we do not find those animals. You can find the lion in Africa. If you're going camping in Africa, you're going to find the lion, the cheetah, the elephant, the giraffe, and all the host of the animals that you usually see on National Geographic or Discovery. And in India, we usually can find king cobras. We find a lot of snakes in India. We find scorpions in the desert, like in Kuwait. You'll find the sidewinder. You'll find vipers. You'll find scorpions. You'll find poisonous ants. So be aware of the wild things around, and make sure that you know how to protect yourself. All right, try to take some antivenom or some antihistamines in case you are having, if in case you are allergic to those things. Like bears are very dangerous. All right, so do not keep your food laying around, because bears can smell food from about 10 kilometers away if the wind is right. All right, if the wind is blowing towards the bear, even from more than 10 kilometers, they'll be able to smell the food. And bears are very opportunistic. It means they do not like to hunt. If they think that they can get free food, then they will go for it. Next thing is wood. Wood is very important, especially if you're in the jungle, because wood you can make camp craft, and you can make tools which can protect you from animals. Like if you're going to kill a snake, simply having one stone, if you miss with one stone, then you're done for. Okay, you have to run around for another stone. But if you've got a stick, you miss once, at least you have a chance of hitting it another time. All right, not everyone is David, and not every time God allows us to kill the Goliaths in our life. Anyway, so wood can also allow us to make a fire, and animals naturally are afraid of fire. So it'll keep you warm. Wood will keep you warm. Uh, try to keep your wood dry. And also, when you're camping, do not pitch your tent under dry wood, because you do not know, a small earthquake, little bit of wind, and the whole branch can come crashing down upon you. And instead of having a camping, you're going to have a medical emergency. Next thing is willingness to go into the wilderness, and willingness to be able to ask permission. Like you should be willingness to learn something new when you're going out there, because most of you live in concrete buildings, steel buildings. You are not aware of the things around. So when you go, try to look at the plants. Each grass is different, each flower is different, the sky, every minute the sky is changing. All right, so try to learn something new, because God has created all those things for us. So these are the 6 W's: wind, water, weather, wild things, wood, and willingness. Be aware of all these things before you go camping. All right, next slide, please. Now, fire safety, like I mentioned, fire is one of the most important things for civilization. If you know the story of civilization, like civilization is when man became more modern. All right, we know the stories. I mean, they teach us in science that in the beginning, human beings used to wear leaves. We know from the Bible that Adam and Eve wore leaves uh, for their clothing. But over time, the thing that changed, or the thing that even the human beings, we are not as strong as other animals. The thing that allows us to be in dominant, to have power over other animals is fire. All right. If you watch the story of Mowgli, that big, this one, Louis, that big gorilla, or actually it's a ape. He asks Mowgli the secret of making fire, because once you know how to make fire, you can cook your food. All right. Those who eat meat, especially if you're in a wilderness situation, you're not going to get all your grains. All right. So you may have to eat, if even if you do not eat meat, it's best that you might find eggs. You would have to fry your eggs. Water is water. You can boil your water with fire. You can keep yourself safe and warm. Now, fire is very important, but you should also be aware of how to use fire. Because fire can spread very rapidly. If you've got a cloth like mine, which is not cotton, a small ember can come here and the whole thing can burn. Now, my sister is here. A few years ago, she was playing with fire near my hair, and then she burnt my hair. Luckily, I did not know it, or if not, I'd have given her some. I don't know what I would have done to her, but I know she would be laughing right now. Anyway, when you build a fire, all right, try to keep it 3 meters, at least 3 meters away from dry things, like dry flammable things like wood, leaves, grass. Try to keep it in a safe place. Next, do not light a fire beneath overhanging branches. The branches that come down. It may be a nice place to camp, all right, but then try not to make a fire there, because if your fire is too big, there's something known as a flash point. Even if the fire does not reach the wood, the heat from the fire will be enough to burn whatever is on top of whatever is on top of the fire. All right. And do not use accelerants. Accelerants are things that it's given lighter fluid, gasoline, or petrol or diesel, etc. Learn to light a fire without these. So better to use matchstick or other methods. We'll go further and we'll learn about those other methods of starting a fire. Put out the fire completely before leaving. Now, suppose you just had a campfire and you're going back to sleep in your tent. It's better to put off the fire if you are in a safe location. All right. But if you're in a dangerous location, what happens is because you've already kept a clearance, so you make the fire a little smaller and you allow it to burn throughout the night so that you're protected from wild animals. So you do not always have to put out the fire, but if you have to put it out, pour some water on it, or you can cover it with sand. The thing is, you have to stop oxygen from getting into the fire so that your fire will die down. All right, next thing is, do not build a fire on top of flammable material. Like the first point says, try to stay away at least 3 meters away from all these flammable materials such as grass, leaves. I've had this experience. You may think that it's a small thing, but once a fire starts, it will go faster than you can put it out. All right. And once we had, just for fun, we had started this, and the fire went so quickly. And by God's grace, we were able to put out that fire. If not, the whole countryside would have gone down in flames. And you know the story, last year, they were just enjoying a baby shower, when they have some party to know whether the baby will be a boy or a girl. So they had these crackers in California and they just burst it. And these crackers went somewhere. And in California, it's very dry. The whole mountain, half the state was burning just because of a small mistake. Now cut away the sword. All right. Now this, do not let, like before you leave, do not allow any fuel to remain around the fire. It's similar to the fourth point, put out the fire completely. Next is keep a fire extinguishing supply handy. All right. If you do not have the extinguisher, one thing is sand. All right. Try to keep a bucket full of sand, a thick blanket which is wet, or a bucket full of water nearby. Because once a fire starts, like I told, you have to put it out very quickly. And if somebody gets burned, then you can pour the water quickly on them, or you can quickly cover them with that wet, thick blanket. All right. Next thing, do not remove burning sticks from a fire. Do not play. Like there's a movie called Mr. Bones. So in the end of the movie, they use something like a hockey stick and they hit and they make crackers and all. So as children, we were very interested in that. We used to play like that, and then me and my friends, we burned an entire field doing that. And when the authorities came, we were acting like, said, no, it was burning, so we just came to see. But then I'm just telling you the dangers. Do not play around with sticks, because I've had friends who have poked me, and I've had friends who've gotten injured and completely burnt. Like their body is not the same anymore because they've suffered third-degree burns because they were playing with fire. Next thing is wear proper footwear around the watch for embers that escape the fire pit and extinguish them immediately. If you are having a big fire, this is very important, because embers are those glowing particles that go around with the heat, and sometimes they can fly up to 10 meters, 100 meters. If the wind is right, maybe half a kilometer away, and you'll be enjoying here, and there'll be a fire somewhere where you don't even know, and the like I said, half the country can be burnt, half the state can be burnt. So always be aware, especially if you are having a big fire, to put out these embers, to be aware of where these embers are going. Next thing, wear proper footwear around a fire. Do not wear uh, things that will melt easily, like thin rubber slippers and all. Many times in winter, I've experienced this. My feet were cold, so I kept my slippers over there near my feet with my slippers near the fire, and then I did not notice, but then the fire was melting my slippers, and then yeah. So do not do not simply wear any footwear. Try to wear good footwear around fires. Be aware that paper, cardboard, and leaves create floating embers that rise. Okay, it's the same thing as the second last, that 2 points ahead. Watch for embers. So when you're having big fires and papers and these light objects, so these things, they're easily carried away by the fire. Next thing is, do not light a fire when conditions are adverse. So especially when you're having, like I mentioned, if you're having a strong wind, or when it doesn't rain for a long time, especially in summers, do not try to build big fires. All right. And then always remember the first point, you have to make a clearance, and it's better to put rocks around. So keep a boundary, all right, around your fire. Next slide, please. Now these relate the following three fires and tell their uses. In part 2, we learned about the cooking fires, right? I told you about the Swedish torch. I told you about the hunter's fire. Now the first one, the hunter's fire, is a cooking fire. It's called as a cooking fire. Now what happens is you've got these two big logs, all right? And in the middle, you've got tinier logs. And what happens is there's a small gap in between. And on top of that, you can keep your pan or whatever. And like I told you about the Swedish fire in the previous class, you can use that also. A Swedish fire is a self-burning fire. I also told about the Dakota fire. So a Dakota fire, what happens is it's like a tunnel, all right? This is a ground. You dig a hole here, and you dig another hole here, and you make a tunnel, all right? So when you made a tunnel, you put your fire from here, firewood, and your oxygen also will be coming from here, and then you put your pot over here. So you've got your pot here, and then this is the tunnel, and that is a cooking fire. All right, a hunter's fire is a cooking fire. Next thing is a reflector's fire. A reflector fire is important because, especially if you're cold, you can use a cliff, not a cliff, but a rock face, all right, or a big tree. Do not burn your fire too close to the tree, but then when you're in the jungles, especially in rainforests, you've got big trees, and then their sides are curved. So they use this like reflectors. If you do not have a reflector, you can create your own like this, and you just make a normal fire. So they made a hunter's fire here, like these two big logs, and they made this tiny fire over here. What happens is the heat from this place, it will reflect you. So especially if you are very cold, you're feeling cold, you can use this fire to warm yourself in a much quicker way. The third one is a star fire. So you just lay down wood like the shape of a star. If you All right, this is the star. It looks like a star, twinkle, twinkle, little star. And this is just a common campfire fire. All right, it's a campfire style. It's a campfire style. So you just lay down your wood in this way. And the thing is, oh, after some time, you have to keep pushing these logs forward because this part will burn. All right, as this part burns, you have to keep pushing the logs further. All right, next slide, please. Now, no 6 ways to start a fire without a match. Build a campfire using one of these. Now, very easy. Okay, the first point is compressed air. Now, just for demonstrative purposes, they've shown this picture in this slide. I'm sorry that I couldn't notify, but this is not how compressed air is used. All right. So what happens is they use a piece of bamboo. It's like an air pump. Those who know, those who ride cycles, a mechanical pump. All right. So if you pumping for a long time, you notice that the pump becomes very hot. So what happens is they use a char cloth. It's somewhat like this. It's like the pump. I'll just draw it for you. This is your pump, and then you have small pump. So this is your pump. Here you keep a char cloth. Okay, it's a small piece of cloth that is black charcoal, and they'll pump it. The moment you pump it hard, this place will become hot, and you get a small ember. The small ember, you transfer it into some small grasses or leaves, and you have to carefully blow it. All right. So once you carefully start blowing it, you'll start getting smoke. Once you start getting smoke, like they say, where there's smoke, there is supposed to be fire. So you have to carefully nurture it. If you simply blow, 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 blow like that, then you can put out the fire before you even start. And that is not how you're supposed to do it. Next thing is curved glass. Now, curved glass, it's better to use a curved mirror or even a plastic bag. All right. Clear plastic bag, you fill it with water. And if you know, the thing is this one, you can use it only in the daytime when the sun is hot. You cannot use it in the evenings or when the sun is low and it's cloudy, because this method uses the sun's rays to get a fire. So what you do is you concentrate. You know, when you use magnifying glass, it uses the same principle. So you use the sun's rays to burn this small pieces of twigs, leaves, and once you get smoke, you'll get a small ember, and you have to nurture. It's called nurturing, or it's called nurturing the ember. So you have to blow carefully, and once you blow it, then smoke will come, more smoke will come, and then you'll have your fire suddenly. The next thing is flint. All right, so this is a piece of stone. While as children we used to have flint around when they're building things, even marble is creates spark. All right, so when you, especially flint is this type of stone. When you hit it together, it breaks easily with a spark. So olden days, before they had glass, before they knew how to make compressed air, people used to use flint. So you've seen those cartoons and all, the Flintstones. They hit two pieces of stone, and then you'll get a spark. You have to collect the spark carefully on top of dried material, and once again you have to nurture it. Next slide, please. So these are three. The next one is friction. So what they're using here is previous one. Yeah. This is the friction method. Now, even right now, if you try rubbing your hands together very quickly, you notice that your palms become warm. All right. So many times in winter, if you're in winter, if you're feeling cold, they do like this. They start rubbing their palm, and so it uses this method. So this method is called the bow and drill method. So they made a bow and they made a drill. So that this is the bow. This part is the bow, and this is the drill. All right, the straight thing. So what happens is they keep turning it. They'll make they turn this. Okay, turn the drill quickly on top of this. And you can see down there is black color. So the faster you drill, the more charcoal is built. All right. Small charcoal is built, tiny pieces of charcoal are built, and suddenly they catch an ember. All right, a small piece of fire, not fire, an ember is created. You have to collect it. So this round thing on the bottom is that collecting where they collect the ember. All right, and then you have to transfer this ember once again to dry grass or your tinder is called, not tinder, kindle. So you're kindling this one, and you have to nurture the fire again. So this is the friction method. Next thing is a metal match. So they use steel and flint again. So steel and flint. The benefit of this is even when it's raining. All right. If a match normal matchstick gets wet, you cannot light a fire. But then with this metal match, by using flint and steel, you can light a fire even though it's wet. All right, not soaking wet, but just even when it's moist, so you can start a fire. And the next thing is a spark. You create spark even using batteries, or by I told last time, by using the bottom of a Coke container, Coca-Cola containers, your soda bottles. You can use those, or you can use potassium permanganate and your vehicle cooling fluid. All right, so when you mix those two together and you keep it in a piece of paper, suddenly it'll catch fire. All right, so many people, they go camping with vehicles. Try to carry a little bit of potassium permanganate with you, and you can start a fire in that way. Next slide, please. So those were the 6 methods of starting a fire. Know how to properly sharpen a hatchet and knife. Now the left side is a hatchet, is a small piece of axe. Usually the North American Indians, they are famous for this. It's called a tomahawk. All right, it's shaped in the form of a tomahawk, and the right side is a knife. It's an army knife. If you look carefully, this knife has got teeth on this part. So these teeth are used for cutting wood. All right, you can cut pieces. You can cut pieces of wood by using this end, and this end is the sharp end. Try to keep it sharp. So the thing is, even Abraham Lincoln, there's a story when he was around 12 years old. If you watch his movies, they'll show you that he used to cut wood. Now he said this: if I get 2 hours, all right, if I get 2 hours for cutting wood, I will take at least 1 hour to sharpen my axe. Because if you've got a blunt axe, the axe can actually slip and can fly here and there, and you might chop your own leg. Because if you've got a blunt axe, it's not going to cut through the wood nicely. The wood might fly somewhere, and because of that, many people have chopped their own legs. So the thing is how to properly sharpen a hatchet and knife. Now you've got something known as a whetstone. All right, it is a stone that is used for sharpening knives, or else you can use a file. So when you're sharpening, you sharpen it away from you. All right, you sharpen this hatchet, you sharpen this edge. So keep the edge away from you, and you sharpen. You slowly move the stone along the edge. All right, then you'll be able to sharpen your hatchet. You can use a little bit of water. The next one is the knife. So what they do with the knife is they take the knife and like applying butter on your bread or jam on bread. Like you take a little bit bread, butter on your knife, and then you swipe both sides. So what you do with your knife is that's what you're supposed to do. You take your knife on the whetstone, and this edge, you're supposed to swipe it back and forth. All right. And when you sharpen the knife, like I told you, do not try to use too much force, and keep the blade away from you if you're using the other method. So what you do is you keep the blade away from you and you pull it back towards yourself. So you have a sharp hatchet and sharp knife. And what you do is, I just forgot the point. Anyway, so while you're sharpening these, make sure that you keep them facing away from you. And it's very important to have a sharp hatchet or a sharp knife. Next point, please. Next slide. All right, cooking a one-pot meal using fresh or dried food. Now we already talked about those cooking fires. So when you're going for camping, do not try to carry all types of rice cooker or this one. All right. When you actually go for authentic camping, people usually carry just one big dish. Maximum they may carry two. All right. So they usually carry iron dishes like this. Here they use a bucket, type of bucket, if you can see in the first picture. And what you do is you do not have the time and the luxury to cook many things. You do not have the time to cook rice separately or chapati separately or bread separately. And then you want to cook dal, or then some, you want to make some other vegetables, some pasta or anything. So what they do is when they go camping, they usually put everything in one. Okay, like a stew, like khichdi. In India, we have something known as khichdi. All right. Uh, Risotto. All right. So it's somewhat equivalent of risotto, and I do not know other countries what they have. But then try to do this. All right, this is one of the requirements when you go. Put your rice inside, put your vegetables inside. Just try to put anything inside and just boil it. So you can use fresh ingredients, or you can use dried food. So dried food examples are dried tomatoes, dried tomatoes, whatever you want to call them. You can have dried aubergines, brinjal. You can have dried chilies. You can have dried spices. You can have uh, cornmeal. All right, or you can have dried oats. Oats are already dry, but they have wet oats also. Anyway, so you can have all this dried food, dried fruits also you can include. All right, and try to cook a one-pot meal. So you just put everything inside, but you have to forget about the taste. Many times it comes out well, but if you're unlucky, then you're left with whatever you have. Next slide, please. Next thing, describe the various types of tents and their uses. All right, so here we've got the traditional tent and the modern type of tent. All right, so the first one is just a piece of tarpaulin or usually canvas, this type, and this one can usually house many people. All right, it's not a small tent. They usually do not make small tents like this. And when you pitch this tent, uh, they pitch in such a way the wind comes from here and comes out the other way. All right, and sometimes they pitch it this way also. But if it's too windy, then they pitch it in this way so that the wind comes this way and then it goes over like this. But this is the traditional tent. All right. So maybe the Israelites or played at gather your bed sheets.
Can you repeat again? You're breaking. Your It's fully breaking. We just didn't
All
hear.
right.
Yeah. Now I think it's fine. You can just.
Hear me now. All right. So this is the traditional tent. All right. Did you get that point?
Yeah, now we are getting.
The
Just say
first
it.
one is that, yeah. So they use poles, and many times at home, even you make what is known as a simple type of tent. As children, me and my sister, my friends, we used to gather bed sheets together, get 2, 3 chairs, and make a tiny tent. All right. So this is the principle of the first tent is in that way. So you've got these poles, and then you've got a bar, and then you just lay your cloth over it. So you get what is known as a mountain type of tent. Uh, this is the second picture, and it's more the uses is more spacious, but it's very hard to pitch because these pegs and you have to pitch these poles and all that. It takes time to pitch and it takes time to remove and it takes time to pack. The next thing is modern tents. So this is this igloo tent. All right. So they have zippers, mainly zippers for the doors, and you've got this fiberglass in less than 1 minute. So when we used to have competitions, a group of 40 of us can pitch a tent like this in around 35 seconds. So by 1 minute, in 1 minute, 10 seconds, 1 minute, 5 seconds, we can pitch the complete tent, can dismantle it also. All right, so the same thing, they usually use modern nylon. All right, so you've got nylon over here. This one is usually made of canvas. The first one is made of canvas or tarpaulin. So you can see this in the desert in Kuwait. Most of this is the traditional way. If you go somewhere towards this Bedouins, you know, the Tuareg tribes, so they still live in tents like these. And this is a tunnel tent. So it's a tunnel tent is mainly for one person, very convenient for one or two people. So it's long, and this has just two. All right, two ribs. Your your uh, your your lines. I mean the sticks. Just two of these. But this one in this it crisscrosses like an X. But in this it does not crisscross. So this one is light. You can easily dismantle it. For one person tent is very useful. Next slide, please. Okay, how does condensation occur in tents and how can it be prevented? Now, condensation is when water vapor, all right, water vapor turns into what liquid form again. So if you've gone more, almost all of us have done this. I do not know. I don't think there's anyone who hasn't done this. We go to the mirror and we do, and then the mirror becomes foggy, right? There are even songs about that. People go to the mirror, they make it foggy and all that. So what happens is the water vapor, even when we breathe, the moment it comes to the cold surface, the water vapor condenses. All right. This is something you've learned in science. When water vapor turns into liquid form, from the vapor form, it's known as condensation. All right. So what happens is, suppose you've got this tent. So when you have tent in the morning, like this person is sleeping nicely, and in the morning you'll see droplets of water and they'll be falling on you. And in a cold place, especially, these water droplets can be very irritating, and they'll wet your equipment. Like this person's, by looking at the amount of water there, this person's sleeping bag would be drenched by the morning time. So how to prevent it? All right, so you keep ventilation. All right, keep it ventilated so that when your water vapor comes out, suppose you're sleeping here and your water vapor comes out, it does not simply stick up here. Wind will go and it'll take your water vapor out. You may still have some condensation, or suppose you are having moisture, like here, you have moisture from the ground. This moisture can rise, but then if you have got good ventilation, this one goes out. All right. Or else you can even try to uh, keep this warm, the top area warm. So what they do, some places they cover it with grass. Like I told you, it can only condense when the surface is cool. All right. So if you've got this warm surface, it's not going to condense. So they can keep it warm by covering it with grass, pieces of grass, so it'll be warm. Next slide, please. And that's how you can prevent condensation, by good ventilation and by keeping your tent roof warm. Next slide, please. All right, demonstrate your ability to anchor a tent down using the taut line hitch and two half hitches. So this is known as the taut line hitch. Okay. Uh, so when you're pegging your tent, you nowadays actually you can directly peg your tent, but then suppose you've got an extra cover, or like the traditional tent, you have to pull the tent and with the rope, and you have to tie the rope to one of the pegs. All right. So you can, what they use is these two knots. These are hitches. When you tie a rope around something, it's known as a hitch. All right. So this is known as two half hitches. You take the rope around one and you take it twice around this. So this is going to be your pole. So in reality, this is how it's going to be. This is going to be your peg. You're going to take your rope around and you're just going to take it twice around like this picture. So this is two half hitches. It's very quick, and then this thing will become tight here. And the other one is known as a taut line hinge. So you're having your peg here. You'll take it round like that, and you'll go inside first. You'll make a overhand knot. All right, and then you go down again, and no, you do not go down. You go twice up. So in two half hitches, you go twice down. All right. So you go twice down. That is two half hitches. But then in a taut line hitch, You go up twice, and that is your taut line hitch. So these are two hitches for tying a rope quickly to poles. Next slide, please. You learned this more in the North's honor. Properly locate and build one of the following and describe its importance to the individual and the environment. The first thing is a camp sink and dishwashing area. Now, when you have dishes, it's good to wash your dishes. If you want to spare the trouble of washing dishes, you carry disposables. But then anyway, you will have to cook in a dish. You'll have to prepare the food in a dish. So create a dishwashing area. Now this is the top view. What happens is you take two poles like this, thick poles, and you make a platform. And this platform they put like this. You tie it around with rope here, with rope, since you'll be in the jungle, you tie it around and you keep thinner sticks. So you can wash it here and the water directly goes down. But you'll have to collect the water around here. And you'll have to create a good drainage. All right. That is the camp sink and dishwashing area. The next thing is a toilet. Now, all of us, if you're going to eat, the food is supposed to come out somewhere. Now, it's not safe to simply go around here and there. Actually, in biblical times, they had what a small shovel. All right, and the Bible also says in the book of Moses, that they used to take their shovels. They had to go outside the camp, dig a small hole, do their number two, their latrine in that, and they had to cover it. So that is a very good way, because flies carry germs and it'll be smelling if you do not cover it. All right, your campsite will be smelling, and it's not a pleasant thing to see. If you're walking around, you step on it and you say the four-letter word. All right, so what you do is try to make a shelter. So this is your shelter. The more important than the shelter is uh, you dig a pit. So what they do is they dig a pit and you make a hole. All right, and this is, if you want, you can make a Western style, but then you still have a hole, and try to keep a pipe here. So this is like a septic tank, the pipe that comes out. So all the smell will come out somewhere, and here you're going to cover it, make a small shelter, and after doing toilet, what they do is they cover it with mud. All right, so once you're done doing your number two, you do not simply leave it. They cover it with mud and then it layers up. Once they're done, once it reach a certain height, they change the spot again if they're camping for a longer time. All right, so this is the toilet. You nowadays they've got some buckets and disposables. So you sit on a bucket and you've got a disposable bag, and you leave your waste inside. And many times, I mean, you are recommended to carry your uh, your waste back home and dispose it in a more eco-friendly manner, because you cannot simply leave that plastic out in the wilderness. But doing this, you can just cover it up and you can forget about it. The third one is the shower. All right, so usually in India we do not use showers. It's a very Western thing. We just use mug and bucket. All right, so shower actually wastes more water, because um, yeah, it wastes more water, but some people are used to showers. So what you can do is you can make holes in your bottle. All right, if you do not have this watering can, you can poke holes in the bottom of your bottle, and somehow with your bucket you can you can tilt the bucket. All right, so this rope is there, this person is tilting the can. Once the once the can tilts, this water is going to flow down. And if you create around here a passage for the water to flow through through the bottle with holes, it's going to create something like a shower, and then you can have your shower there. But always be sure to create good drainage. All right, so that you're not left in a pool of dirty bathed water. Next slide, please. Demonstrate 4 basic lashings and construct a simple object using these lashings. Next slide, please. So the next slide will allow us. So this is known as a square lashing. Lashing is when you tie two pieces of wood together with a rope. So that is known as lashing. All right. So there are basically two lashings. It's known as the square lashing, or it's known as the cross lashing, or the X lashing. So in the square lashing is you start with a clove hitch. All right, a clove hitch. You will tie one wood. So you're going to tie two pieces of wood. They tie this in a T shape. All right. So this is cross shape. So you'll start by tying a clove hitch on one of this so that you will tighten it. And then you start making a plus. So you'll go around one, you go under, you go over one piece of wood and you go under. See, they go over this, they go under this. They go over this, they go under this. So you go over, under, and you have to keep it tight. And in the end, you can end with, okay, with a type of clove hitch. Now that is not a clove hitch, but they recommend to end it with a clove hitch. All right. Or you can end it with any other strong type of knot, other strong type of hitch. So this is the square lashing. And if you go camping, to finish this requirement, you're supposed to demonstrate this. So the thing is, just keep your wood like this in a plus or like a cross. You go over one, you go under one, you go over one, you go under one without making an X. All right. So you make a square. This is the square. This is not a square lashing. Next slide, please. The next slide is diagonal lashing or X lashing or cross lashing. So the thing is, in that you are going over and under. All right. In this, what we'll do is when we go over one, we'll go and make an X under it. So in the other one, you just go over, under, over, under, under. You do not like, all right. I show you, it'll just be like that. It makes a square. So you start this lashing also with a clove hitch. Even if you don't remember anything, just remember you always start lashing with clove hitches. All right. You start lashing with clove hitches. And then in this diagonal lashing is you make, so this is stronger than the square lashing. And you usually end again with a clove hitch. Next slide, please. Next, okay. This is shear lashing. All right, so this is when you're planning to join. Okay, what happened? Shear lashing is two poles together. All right, you can use shear lashing to lash three poles also. So again, they start with a clove hitch. Here, it's written there. You start with a clove hitch with one pole, and then you wrap around the other one several times. You just go round, 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 very tight. And you go in between these two poles. So you've got these two poles, you go many times round, 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 and you go in between. And you tie tight, finish off with a clove hitch again on the other pole. So here you've joined two pieces of poles. So if you want to make a pole longer, suppose you want to make a flag post, so this is what you can do. Next slide, please. That is for the three. Now we're going to learn about three poles. Shear lashing, three poles. Yeah, so what you do is the same thing. You go like the shear lashing for two poles, but only thing you've got three poles. But what you do is you go, after you're done going around, you go in between this ones, and then you go in between the other one also. And if you turn it in the right way, you can make a tripod. All right, it becomes a tripod. So your three poles will be like this. You can keep a hook here, and you can cook your fire on that. So this is your three types of lashing: the square lashing, the diagonal lashing, and the shear lashing. Now this one is continuous lashing. It is the same as three lashing, but then here they use extra. Suppose you want to make a chair, you want to make a hammock, or just for any other reason, a raft, mainly for rafting. So you've got these pieces of wood, so you have to use continuous lashing. So what, you go around this, around this, around this, and you got to lash here one, and then you go around this, and you start lashing. So once you join, you can make a raft. Next slide, please. Or you can make a hammock. You can make, I mean, you can use the applications are manifold, are many. You can use your intelligence, your ingenuity to make whatever you want. Next slide, please. So they continuous lash this. So that is how actually you're going to have a big pole, and you're going to have small. So you can use this for making. So these are the small pieces of wood, and you lash it on. So you'll actually lash it around the bigger pole. All right. You'll go around and you'll cross. So they use both cross lashing, and you go around like shear lashing. Next slide, please. Construct a simple object. So what they use here is a hanger. So they use a small hook, and they, whatever lash they wanted to use, whether it's a square lashing, here they joined these two pieces of wood, or a diagonal lashing, and they made a hanger. So you can hang your clothes. If you want to hang your pots, you can hang maybe a pot here, you can make a balance. So this is a simple object, or you can even make a hook. For camping skills too, they learned how to make a cooking hook, a pot hook, or you can even make a ladle or a spoon, something like this. Next slide, please. Know how to replace the mantles on a camp lantern. Now, nowadays, in the modern age, we use rechargeable batteries in torches. In those days, even 10 years ago, there were still lanterns around. Even though I'm in a remote place, I don't think I've seen a lantern in a long time. But then when they go for camping, especially in mountains, they usually carry kerosene lanterns, all right, or kerosene lamps. This gas, what they call gas, is not gas as we know in India. Gas is gasoline, because or they use kerosene. It is more efficient. All right. So go to the next slide, please. So this is a lantern. In the British era, people used lanterns mainly. And what happens is, here you've got your kerosene. All right, your fuel is here. Or in places like Alaska, in all the Arctic regions, they use whale oil or seal oil. All right. So you can use oil also. And what happens is, you've got your fuel here, and they use this glass so that the fire can, I mean, the wind won't blow out the fire. And what happens is, they usually pull this up. All right, so you can pull this piece up. There's a latch there that will allow you to change the wick. The wick is a piece of cloth that burns. All right, it's like a candle. So in candle, you've got the wick. So a lantern is just like a candle, but you've got solid fuel. In lamps, you've got liquid fuels. So you've got the wick. Lift this up, and you can trim your wick, because the wick usually burns, and to let it burn again efficiently, you can trim your wick. And so you are supposed to turn off the gas. Here they talk about a gas lantern. All right. So you should turn it off properly, remove the cover. All right. And place it in a stable place. Now remove any old mantle. This is the cover. And tie the new mantle into the gas pipe. So there's the string. There's a string around the collar that slips over the gas pipe. And all right, here they say pressurize the gas tank. So what happens is, they assume that the tank is empty. All right. So the tank is empty, or it has not been pressurized. So what pressurizing is I'll show you in the next image. So they pressurize the gas tank, and then you can start your fire again. So once you start your fire, you can bring back this glass piece and the mantle. And if you open the fuel more, then your lamp will burn brightly, but then your fuel will be wasted more. And if you close it, it's like a gas. At high heat, you get more heat, but then your fuel will be wasted more. At the lower setting, you get less heat, but you'll be able to save more fuel. Next slide, please. Now, this is a camping stove. The next slide. All right, so this is a kerosene camp stove. So what they have here is a pump. So what they do is you actually pump air inside. So what happens is this fuel comes out from here at a high speed. All right, high speed, and then here you can light a fire. So they use either liquid or gas fuel. Like I said, gas is very volatile. If something happens, then all your gas will escape, and it can even explode. But liquid is more safe, like kerosene, and they usually use it when they go to Mount Everest and all. They usually carry their own kerosene lamps. Yes. So you can pressurize it from here, and you burn your fuel over here by using matchstick or lighter or your flint and steel, and you can keep your stove up, your pan up here, and it gives you warmth, and it also allows you to cook food. So how to maintain pressure pump on a camp stove is you've actually got a pump, and people actually pump like hand pump, like when you're pumping cycles. Do not pump it too much, if not it might explode. You'll be able to know how much to pump by the pressure that comes out. Next slide, please. This is the same. This is just they've got a pump, and you'll know how much to pump by the pressure. All right, so I believe that is the the end of our class. What we learned mainly today is about tents. All right, so about tents, you've got your traditional tent, and then you've got your modern tent. So your modern tents are easy to pitch. Your traditional tent is hard to pitch, but then you can have more people within, and it gives more ventilation, but less protection from the elements like wind and from rain, unless you have flaps. All right, the modern ones are waterproof also, and quickly you can put it up quickly, but then it's usually maximum occupancy. You cannot keep many people inside the normal tent. I mean the modern tents. The next thing was about fire, right? Do not simply burn fire here and there. And yeah, do not burn a fire within your tent. That I think I forgot that point. That is very silly to do. That's not very wise thing to do, because modern tents, especially, they are made out of flammable material like plastic, rayon, nylon. That's what uh, makes them light. But then, like I said, even one piece of, no need even a piece of ember, just a little bit heat, and your entire tent can be melting under you, and that can give a fire hazard. And about these practicals, I don't know how Sir Roland will do it for you. But then, like one more thing, do not forget, lashing is used for tying ropes. I mean, tying two pieces of stick. All right, that is known as lashing. And hitch is when you tie a rope around an object. So that is a hitch. Whenever you start lashing, you always start with a clove hitch. Now you will learn it more in the knots honor. It's very difficult here through online to teach you. Even if we show you a video, these things are very practical. But anyway, all the best. Try to keep this in mind, especially the 6 Ws before going camping, and the importance of not simply playing with fire. All right, that's it.